Hey everyone, welcome back to the Rollout. I'm Linsay Rousseau.
And I'm Genevieve Marie. Hello and welcome.
And today we're going to be diving into that most adorable and heartfelt movie, Turning Red, from Pixar and Disney. Okay, so Turning Red has been out for a little while now. So all the critics' reviews are in, all the trolls' reviews are in, all the things that have been blowing up, the internets are in, and we're gonna break all that down. Some of it has credibility, and some of it just is people need to just shut their mouths.
Okay, so I wanted to know the hype of this movie, like not necessarily like why people are saying that it's good, but mostly the reasons why parents are saying that how dare you show my child this thing. And in light
Growing
of
up is a thing.
growing up is a thing, puberty apparently is a thing, and
Mothering parents is a thing. Parents who don't understand their kids is a thing.
Okay, so there's a lot of things happening in America right now.
A little bit.
A lot. Let me just point out that the two things that I mostly hear about parents whining about or complaining, I shouldn't belittle their complaints. I'm not a parent, but some of them are real dumb. Two of the main things that they're complaining about is that how dare you mention that women have periods? Yes. And like,
oh, the shame.
Okay.
That's why we have a pink tax in this country, people. That's why we have a pink tax in this country, because men refuse to talk about female anatomy and biology, and it's why women have a harder time getting doctors to pay attention to them. Sorry, I'm going off on a tangent here. Please explain.
Okay. All right, let's roll back. I'm not gonna get up on my soapbox or anything, but like parents felt uncomfortable when their children asked them about the very basics of puberty, like women having periods,
which is a big deal. Like, if that comes as a surprise to you, like, I mean, I don't know. I was informed up the wazoo as to what periods was, but I'm like, if all of a sudden I'm like bleeding from a place I had no idea that I would be like, oh my God, I'm dying. I have internal organ damage. Like
that's literally the opening of Carrie.
Yeah, and people yeah, exactly. So it's about periods.
So parents are upset that they and they don't have to educate their children about periods. They can, like, how many people lie about the Easter Bunny and Santa Claus and where your teeth go after they fall out of your head? Like, make something up. Like, parents are very comfortable about doing those things. So why not I'll tell you when you're older? How is that not, or like, I'll tell you when the time is right? How is that?
I don't know, just suck it up. It's 2022 and tell your fucking kids what periods are. Sorry.
Or parent your child and tell them what a period is. Like,
because Lord knows the schools can't do it anymore, apparently, in most of the country now.
Yeah, so like that was the one thing, is that parents are clutching their pearls because children are asking about what periods are, which Turning Red like is so much more
than
that. Dealing with that. Like, the mother in that film doesn't mind, like doesn't care, like that her daughter is having a period. She cares that her daughter has like this inner monster inside of her that is jumping out, and and she's ashamed that she also has this monster in her as well,
which made me think of the movie 13, because if anyone's like, oh, she's just a cute 13-year-old kid, I'm like, no, honey. 13 is when shit starts to get weird. If you've never seen the movie 13, go watch it. It'll make you think completely differently about 13-year-old girls.
Right. So, like, the bigger part about Turning Red isn't isn't about the fact that like a little girl got her period for the first time. That's not what this is about. What it's about is the fact that a little girl is learning how to become her own person outside of the very claustrophobic and uh, highly
Demanding, yeah.
demanding realm of her parents, or specifically her mom. And like she has to learn that her mom can't make all the choices for her.
Yeah.
Like her mom can't like live her life for her. She has to become her own person. And that's where a lot of the conflict in the movie comes from,
Yeah.
is that she's realizing that her mother has had a chokehold over her entire life, and that now that everything inside of her is changing, and that she's having, she's growing, she's literally growing up.
Yeah.
It's not just the body that's changing, but it's also her perspective on things, her feelings, realizing that one day she too is going to have to be, she too is going to be an adult and needs to decide what person she's going to become.
Right.
It's so much bigger than the complaint of there being like a not even 5 seconds, like a couple seconds on screen showing of pads being put onto a sink. But that seems to be the major thing that people are focusing on. The other thing that that parents specifically are focusing on, is that they don't like that the child is going against the parents' wishes.
What?
Which, yes, that the child is being disobedient and being disrespectful to their parent in the film. And to that, I have to say, maybe you should look inward and consider that maybe you and this parent in the movie have a lot of parallels.
Yes.
And unfortunately, the parents, the mother's major flaw in this movie is that she is controlling.
She's smothering. I mean, the term helicopter parent exists for a reason, and it's true. It's like, how many of us remember being this age and remember like this was the age when conflict with your parents started happening, because it was when you started discovering who you were. And everyone's like, oh, the rebellious teenager, but part of that is trying to figure it out, because for so long everything you did and thought was what your parents gave you, and now you're out in the world, you've got friends, you're exposed to new experiences, and it's like, no, mom, I want to play the piano, not the saxophone. Things as mundane as that, to, hey, mom, can I have an afternoon off to like go hang with my girlfriends? It's just, there's that whole thing where parents are growing up as kids are growing up, and we expect the kids to grow up. But if the parents don't also grow up, then that's when conflict happens. And if parents don't realize that this is when they have to start letting go a little bit. Yes, you do need borders and structures, but this is where you start being a little more hands off and let them figure it out.
That's kind of the thing that I was looking at. I'm like, the parents that have issues with this movie, they're a very certain subsect of people. And I would argue that a lot of parents, especially in America, expect it to be, are expected to be controlling, are expected to have a hold on their child's life,
which
until they move out.
And unfortunately, we're seeing this at the national level now, because we've seen an increase in parents trying to get schools to ban books. We've got the whole thing where, we don't want teachers talking about sex education. We don't want teachers talking about sexual orientation. We don't want teachers talking about racial discrimination in this country. So like all of these things, this movie came out when all of these things are making headlines right now, which all goes down to parents trying to control every little aspect of their child's life
Right.
Yeah.
And that's like I can understand the want to protect your child from certain, from you just want to protect your child, period. But the world is they're going to be living in the world. There are things that they're going to be learning and discovering whether or not you have this chokehold on their life.
Yeah.
I that's just life. You encounter it if you go to school, if you hang out with friends, if you go, kids don't really go to the mall these days, but if you go out and live in the world, you're going to experience it. And parents are wild. They're absolutely wild. They think that they can control these things.
Yeah.
But
And
at the
granted,
end
we're
of the
saying
day,
not all parents. Let us put out the
not all
disclaimer that
parents.
we're not talking about all parents.
No. But at the end of the day, kids are going to find out these things, especially about periods and puberty and sexual
Especially
orientation
in 2022 with the internets, which back in 2002, we did not yet have the term Googling. I don't think. I'm trying to think now. I do not believe the term Googling existed yet, but it was a lot harder to find out information on your own in the early 2000s than it is now.
Right.
Because that's when this film takes place. So, yes.
Right. And so when you try and shelter your kids from every little thing that's out there in the world, you miss out on the opportunity of trying to connect with your child, and you miss out on the opportunity of telling them about this stuff in a safe, controlled way. Because like you said, Linsay, a lot of kids learn a lot of really bad things about puberty and sex and all sorts of things from the internet. And they learn a lot of things that are not true.
Yep.
They learn a lot of things that are very harmful. Like stereotypes and things that are just rumors and bullshit. Like it's just made up shit that people put out there on the internet.
Right. And then people talking about how kids are learning about sex from Pornhub. And it's like, you've got a whole generation of guys that think this is, and not all, we're not generalizing, but you've got a percentage of young men who have watched porn because it's so easily available. You don't have to go to the seedy little VHS store anymore and think that that's how sex is supposed to be. So,
right. And you also have kids who, and this is where pickup artists really are detrimental to society, is that you have kids that are awkward no matter what gender they are, and they don't know how to speak to people that they like, or they don't know how to get boyfriends, girlfriends, or partners. And so they will defer to these idiots who market themselves as pickup artists, and because they're older, because they act like they have a whole bunch of confidence, the crap that they say, which is wild, some of the stuff that these people say, especially about women and how many partners they have versus what that does to their bodies. I'm not going to get into that, but but they'll take that, like as an example, they take that as truth. And would you as a parent rather tell your child the truth about growing up and about periods and how babies are made and all of that sort of stuff, rather than having some random gym bro on the internet who is just pretending that he has a quote unquote stable of women that he rotates through, that it's you don't. So anyway, there's a lot of controversy just on the parent side
of
this movie, and then you have
lordy, then you have
in the professional realm.
Then you have the men. Then you have the men with platforms who apparently feel like they are able to put out information that is just so mind-boggling. So a couple of the reviews that came out, which stirred up a lot of controversy, said things to the effect of, well, this movie could have been better, but it's so unrelatable because you have to be a 13-year-old Chinese girl to appreciate this film.
Yeah.
Just all that being said, that publication and that writer had to publish retractions to that. They pulled the article and he had to make a public apology that, oh, maybe I should have watched it through a different lens. I don't know. Yeah, maybe you should have, you entitled white cis male. Sorry, I'm calling you out, but that's what happens.
Okay, so like, I'm not going to man bash, but I am going to say,
and not all men. My dad loved this movie. I'm just saying there was a population of men that said these things.
Right. Like, unfortunately, there were people who were speaking out of turn.
That's a gentler way of putting it, Genevieve.
A gentler way of putting it. There were a certain number of people who had large platforms who came from very trusted news sources that said things about this movie that would not have been said if it were
a young boy going through puberty,
if it were a young white girl going through puberty,
or a young white boy going through puberty.
A young white boy going through puberty, which is that the second one is obviously the main thing. But like, we're taking it in levels of kind of like breaking it down, because
yes,
because the further you get away from white male protagonist in movie, the more quote unquote unrelatable things certain audiences, certain people are going to say that it is, which in reality, it's just the fact that we are not used to seeing. We're not used to seeing women-centered stories. We're not used to seeing Asian-centered stories. And that is what is throwing people off. It's not the story itself that is unrelatable. It's not the fact that like a mother and a daughter having issues and contentions together being unrelatable. It's the fact that we are so used to seeing stories that center white men, that is the default, and anything outside of it, like to a lesser degree, like a story that centers a white woman is is other to Western culture. And that was made very apparent, that mindset was made very apparent by a couple of reviews that have now been retracted, that that people either they rewrite the review,
they apologize for it,
like an apology for it. And it was just it was unfortunate that they that they stepped all over their dicks in this moment.
Question to them is like, what were you thinking was going to happen when you published this review?
That's the thing, that they didn't think anything was wrong with it.
Well, and that's because they're coming from a position of privilege. They're coming from a position where most of the movies that they are watching or have been grown up and conditioned on for decades are told through a white cis male lens. And thankfully, Hollywood is starting to open the door to other stories.
Yeah, and it is that conditioning that really makes it hard for people to step outside of looking at things through that lens. And I, like, unfortunately, like, that guy that wrote that article is failing us in a big way, but on a macro level, society failed that guy.
Yeah, I agree.
And that is what we need to focus on, really. It's not the one bad actor, because issues like this aren't because of a single or a couple of bad actors. That would be a mistake to think that. It would be a mistake to think that the one pickup artist that's out there that, you know, is telling young boys that they need a stable of women to rotate through is one bad actor, and like it's not a systemic problem, because it is a systemic problem. It's a societal issue.
It is.
That society failed that guy as much as it failed the stable of women guy. Like, it is something that we need to unlearn. We need to unteach ourselves to see media in that way, because when you step outside of media and you go into the workplace, you are surrounded by a plethora of different people from different backgrounds.
Right. And that is you know what, and that's the thing, and this is the thing that I feel like is really missing. And I'm going to specifically say in American culture, but it's obviously not just American culture, and that's empathy. I feel like there is a massive lack of empathy in the world today. And how you develop empathy is by learning about other people who are different from you, and other cultures and other sex and all different upbringings. And so to say that something's not relatable, like, yeah, Genevieve and I are not Chinese. I cannot relate to what it's like to have to work in a temple. I have never done that. Can I relate to being a 13-year-old girl going through puberty? Absolutely. But aside from all of that,
a lot of Chinese girls cannot relate to what it's like working in a temple.
Exactly. But it's
but it adds flavor to the story.
Right. But there is intrinsic value in being exposed to lives and worldviews that are not your own. So even if this reporter, you know, he was an assistant editor at he was a managing director at Cinema Blend. Even if he could not relate to being a 13-year-old Chinese girl, he could at least see it as an experience to, and again, it's animated, but to learn about a world view that he has not been exposed to, and thus growing as a human being, developing empathy, being able to be more open and understanding of other people and other cultures. And the fact that someone would shut something down so quickly because it didn't 100% represent their life experience is just, I wish it was surprising to me, but unfortunately, it doesn't surprise me. It saddens me, but it doesn't surprise me.
No, not at all. I think, and a lot of people, like, we're just talking about like the handful of people in the professional world, specifically in the critics realm.
Right. We're not talking about the general.
That stepped on their dicks. Yeah. The general, like, the internet itself has been losing its shit over this movie, either one way or another, good or bad. And you have for one professional writing an article that is that tone deaf, you have thousands of other people who are going online and being just as tone deaf, but like not not in as a polite manner.
No. The cesspool of Twitter. Yes.
But then you have a ton of other people on the other side of things that are really happy to have this movie.
Loving that this movie exists for so many reasons. Maybe you love the story. Maybe you love the characters. Maybe you love the art. You know, I live with two animators, and they loved the art of it. The hair on the panda, like, it's smooth when she's calm and it sticks up when she's excited. You know, it's like the fact that they mixed Pixar's traditional animation style with like hints of manga and anime was like really telling to, you know, the story style that the director and the writer was trying to tell.
Right, exactly. And I mean, like, when you talk about turning red, the conversation gets political very quickly. And
it should. I mean, yeah.
And that is unfortunate, because of the fact that when I watched it anyway, I just enjoyed myself.
I loved it. I was
And
like,
I don't
oh my
want to have
God.
to step outside my movie viewing experience into a shitstorm of people losing
No,
their
and I was
mind
like, I love
over a mom putting tampons on a sink. Like,
and I love the nostalgia. I love that there were Tamagotchis. I love that there were throwbacks to like the Backstreet Boys. I mean,
right. One of the characters, I don't remember which of the friends it was, but she had a baby G watch.
yeah, I was like the little
And
things.
yeah, they like there's a ton of little things in there that they popped in there
Yeah.
that is
And if
just
you're Canadian, apparently there were tons of things for Canadians to relate to. So
right. So yeah, so like I don't know. I really enjoyed my viewing experience.
loved
But then
it.
when I stepped outside of my viewing
And
experience
then the
to
internet ruined it,
to
as
the
it
greater
does many
world,
things.
when they discuss things, like people are pointing out just the randomest things to get hung up about, you know, besides the larger things that we had mentioned. You know, like they'll mention like, oh, the animation style, like Pixar is going down the tubes, how dare they like lean into like the more anime stuff. And like, to be honest, when I saw it, I kind of equated it more to like a DreamWorks like, and
Yeah.
not in a bad way. Like, I think this is a very polished, like if
Well, and
you
it was
were
a
to take some,
choice. They chose
right,
to
if
do
you,
that because of where this character, this young girl, was coming from, how she was influenced. Like, obviously, this character loved anime and manga. And so they incorporated that into the animation style, which I was like,
right.
that's a really interesting way to help show the personality of a character.
And like parents aren't gonna fucking understand this shit anyway. Like maybe my generation that is having children, like, yes, yeah, they get it to some extent. But the thing where she's drawing the anime, like the manga version of the boy from the corner store, and
Yes.
like drawing him into a mermaid, like making fan art essentially, is just, that is so specific of a of a thing that a lot of people have done slash do slash post on the internet,
Yeah.
that a creator in that room, I can't imagine did not have a personal experience doing that exact same thing themselves.
Yeah.
Like, it's insanely specific and wonderful and really relatable, but not something that not something that the older generation is going to understand necessarily,
Right. Unless they have kids
to.
Right. Unless they have kids that
do
are
that.
Yeah.
There's just a lot of things that were in there that I'm just like, oh, the parents will not get this, you know, like, and I'm speaking to that from the perspective of a 30-year-old woman. I'm talking about like older generations definitely
We're
not going to
talking
get that.
50s and 60-year-olds, 50 and 60-year-olds. Yeah.
Yeah. They're definitely not going to get that. There are some people, you know, that know nothing about anime or manga that are just gonna be like, "Ooh, this is weird."
Yeah.
Like, I don't get this. And it's just like, it is definitely a community out there on the internet that, like, you know, from the artist community that is very into stuff like that, you know?
Yeah.
Like, there are a lot of and I think that's what makes this movie great, is that there are a lot of inside jokes, a lot of like inside knowledge, like community knowledge that is being put into it as well. And, you know, when you spot those things, you're like, oh yes, that is like real life. That is quite fun.
And I think that's, you know, and that's what a great movie does, is it lets people relate to it on different levels. So everyone is going to have a different viewing experience of this movie based on their background. And it's like, yeah, if you're not into anime and manga, that might not matter to you, might not know what's going on, but you can still love the movie. If you are into anime and manga, that's just like one more little nibble to like dive into and appreciate, you know? So just have some more empathy, world. Just be more empathy. That's my takeaway from this episode, is just, you know what? Yeah. Broaden your horizons, man. Just broaden your horizons. It's amazing what happens when you do. Oh yeah, we'd love to know your thoughts.
Right, exactly. Did the mom putting pads on the sink just like send you off into a fucking rage?
A spiral? Did you throw the remote across the room and storm out?
Or were you like one of the many people on the internet saying like, yeah, like I have bought my girlfriend or wife or sister pads before and it's no fucking big deal, because there are plenty of people out there that was just like, yeah, no, this is nothing, which it is. It's nothing. It's fucking nothing.
It literally is a biological experience that over half the world population experiences, with few exceptions. So yes.
Insane. Absolutely insane. It's like, I don't know. I don't live in that world where things like that are egregious.
I try to ignore the loud voices from that world as much as possible, because I don't have the stress level capacity to be able to process insanity like that.
Oh, anyhow, well, we liked Turning Red.
We loved it.
We loved it. Let us know what you think in the comments. If you like this video, like, subscribe, do the stuff. And Linsay, should we try? Okay. 1, 2, 3.
Hear the rollout.
Roll out, and we will
geek with you
next week. Cut the feed.
Cut it down.
Cut the feed.
Bye, guys.